Hello, 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 everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Sales Development Podcast. I am David Dulany, your host, and I'm joined today by Blair Carey, the founder of Inside CRO. Blair, how you doing today?
It's a great day to be around, to be working.
It's a great day to be above
Happy.
ground.
Exactly. As my old friend used to say when he was racing motorbikes, always keep the shiny side up.
There you go. I like that. That's good, man. Well, welcome aboard, and
Thank you.
tell me about Inside CRO and how did you get into this?
It was, so first of all, I'm an investment analyst by trade, and you might see a few pieces of paper behind me. That's
We
from
do.
the days when I was an investment analyst. Um, and I spent a lot of time in private equity and private debt. And a lot of the time, what I would do is I would have these people coming to me and asking me about getting money from them. And I would ask them about their go-to market and sales and marketing strategy. And they said, oh, well, we're going to hire somebody to do that. And I was like, that's not a strategy. That's idea. So they never got funding. And then so what wound up happening is after 2009, I had invested our fund's last dollars. Myself and the entire investment team got let go. So I decided that I had had enough of trying to be in the investment business, and I went back to being in the operating business. So I started working as a chief operating officer of an internet technology company for 4 years. I ran 3 different sales teams in 5 different groups. And then I wound up somehow winding up in the sales function of most companies that I worked at.
Hmm.
The last real place I worked at was an internet IoT company that focused on the water and wastewater industry and some work in the oil and gas space. And the thinking at the time was that sales in that industry and industrials really only happens by having people in trucks driving around to go see different customers and talk to them about new technologies and problems they were having and equipment that could solve their problems.
Hmm.
I was asked or tasked within the last year of my role there to build an inside sales motion, and I proved that I could build a significant amount of pipeline just using a traditional inside sales motion. So we had an SDR who basically made calls to water and wastewater operators, and myself acting as the account executive would actually do complete discovery calls, do scoping calls, close transactions, and build everything through. And then what happened is that company, the board said, oh, we're going to focus on an OEM strategy instead of direct sales. So my group got disbanded, and that's when Inside CRO started, basically. I saw the light. I saw we could help industrial technology companies change the way that they sell from what was done in the 1970s when my dad was a pharmaceutical sales guy to today's modern enterprise sale motion.
That's really interesting. The one thing is usually people go through and they're an operator for a while and then they become an investor or they go the opposite
Yeah,
direction
yeah,
of you.
yeah.
But you wanted to get back into the trenches here.
Right. Well, and we are in the trenches every day. That's for sure. Right. I
Yeah,
mean,
definitely.
I make cold calls just like everybody else on our team.
Hmm. Excellent. Okay. And then so you got into this and you saw the old school methodology of sales in the industrial industry. And I'm sure that
Uh-huh.
it still goes on. And it just reminds me,
Absolutely.
I had this one job interview, this is like 15 years ago, where I don't know how I ended up on this, but I was going to be selling the cutters that you see people cutting roads, to create new roads. That those guys
Right.
are out there now. You'll
Mhm.
see them everywhere now that I mention it, but you see them out there cutting out, big chunks of the road so that they can build a new
Right.
one. And this
Right.
lady, really nice lady, she sent me out on this interview to become a rep for them. And
Yeah.
um, the job was driving around, to these job sites and basically just asking if their, thing is worn out and do you need a new one and taking
Right.
orders like that. And so do you still see that methodology in the industry?
Absolutely. And it's not, by the way, it's not just exclusive to the industrial technology space. I've also found that exists in the medical devices space, where basically the idea is to build a series of what I call territory reps, whose focus is to farm a specific region or area in which they operate and work on specific accounts. It's not really account-based focused. It's really territory focused. And even through COVID, the whole concept of still going to see customers was still there, was still part of that.
Yeah.
And what I find is that when the people that have success in that business or in an industry, they generally create a territory area where they become a specialist in a specific with a specific industry, and they just move to multiple different companies.
Okay.
They don't have any one particular specialty or other than it's sort of the New England area. If they're the rep for New England, you know where all the small towns are in Rhode Island and Connecticut and Vermont and New Hampshire. You know where all those places are because you've been to all of them,
Yeah.
right? And you know who all the people are in those particular locations. And so some company comes along and in a similar space, away you go. You're done.
Yeah. And
Another extra
yeah.
$10,000 a year, you're done.
If I knock on that door, someone opens. If I knock on that one, nobody opens. You
Correct.
can't build that up just sitting in your home. You
Correct.
need to learn that. And so is this the way? And this is going to sound really naive, but is this the way that most industrial companies think about their sales? In that,
Not,
if it ain't
not,
broke,
not,
don't
not,
fix it.
not.
Okay.
I mean, look, the answer is yes. I mean, in what I would call equipment sales, that is very much the case. In
Hmm.
software and analytics sales, the new sales motion that you and I know and understand
Yeah.
has been implemented with varying degrees of success,
Okay.
right? So they might have like an inside outside motion, right? So for example, they might have reps in the field who are tied to inside sales reps who take orders and do paperwork and do bookkeeping. They're basically assistants.
Hmm.
They're not outside reps, they're inside reps. They sit within the headquarters office, and that's a very common business model that we see in the industry. And if you've ever read The Machine by Justin Roth-Marsh, you understand that that's part of the methodology that he prescribes, right? Is that
Hmm.
we have outside reps running around who are basically focused on the work of meeting with customers, understanding our prospects, understanding what their specific needs are, and trying to determine whether or not they can help them at that moment in time. Because as you and I both know, less than 5% of the market is looking for something at any one moment in time. And so they're just basically farming that. And then the person inside the operation is working on all of the paperwork, minutia, payment terms, all those kinds of things, so that the person basically just has to go and see people.
Got it. Okay. And this generally works fine. So your average industrial company is like, this is how we do it, and everything's fine.
Because they don't know any different. They don't they
Okay.
don't know that there is another model or another method, right? So
Okay.
they could dramatically reduce their workforce, right? Just by going to a more enterprise type model, because they don't need, for example, when we work with customers, we can have meetings in Houston, in Columbus,
Hmm.
in Sacramento, and Beaumont, Texas, all in the same day.
Hmm.
You can't do that in that other model.
Okay. And
You
and so
can't.
when
Unless
you're
you had
talking,
reps
yeah.
in all of those areas, you couldn't do that in another model.
And so when you're talking to, these companies and they go, okay, we've got, the traditional sales
Mhm,
model and it's okay. I mean, it's not great, but
mhm,
it's
mhm.
doing okay. Where do you start with them to say, okay, here's how they do it in the tech industry, and here's how you
Right.
could potentially do it for you?
It's a great question. So what we basically say is we're not trying, as an agency, we're not trying to disturb anything that you're currently doing.
Hmm.
All we want to do is try to do something new in a new market, in a new area, in a new place. Now, some of these companies that are representatives of manufacturers have specific territorial requirements, meaning they can only operate in Texas or Louisiana or Alabama or whatever, or even in a general specific city. Okay. Think of copier sales guys. Remember way back when, 25
Right.
years ago, everybody was, half your friends were copier sales guys because that's where they started.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Definitely. My uncle was a copier sales guy for like 50 years or something like that.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. And that, so, but they had
Did really well.
some company, yeah, some company had the specific territory in that area or representative in that area, or they worked for Xerox in Philadelphia. That's what they did, right?
Yeah.
Um, what we say is there's a piece of your business that's not working for you, or something that's not working the way you want it to work, or some kind of new area you want to do. We'll test it for you. 4 to 6 months, we'll see what it looks like. We'll see if our method can actually help you.
Mhm.
And 5, maybe 6 out of 10 times, it actually works.
Okay.
And as a result, what happens is we create an entirely new revenue stream with significantly more gross margin than what they had previously. Because a lot of these companies, they work on net gross and net margin because they're buying equipment or they're licensing software from somebody else, and that has a cost associated with it, and they receive a piece of the sales revenue. So for example, a typical manufacturer's rep might receive between 15 and 30% of an actual sale price. So they sell something for $10,000, they get $3,000. And the challenge with
Wow. That's
emerging
crazy.
companies using these types of partnerships, okay, is
Yeah.
that the percentage of revenue that the actual salesperson gets is very, very nominal. So if you have a new technology or a new device that you want to put in the marketplace, you're better off doing this directly than you are using a channel partner of these types, of these representative, because the individual salesperson, let's say in Poughkeepsie, New York, if he sells your optical scanner, which costs $15,000, his company gets 5, he might get $500.
Okay.
So why would he sell your optical scanner for $15,000 when he can sell some kind of neuropathic device that costs $50,000? His company gets $15,000. He gets $1,500. So
Right.
those are some of the challenges in
And
that market.
so let me just take a step back. So this theoretical salesperson that you're talking about, they go in and do they have like a catalog of different products that they can go out and
They might.
sell?
They have.
Yeah.
So if it's a manufacturer sales rep, they have what's called a line card, which is a
Okay.
list of all the products that they have available. Usually they're similar in type, right? They cover different areas. So they might have like one type of generator, one type of pump, one type of, flange or whatever the case is, or a bunch of different types of devices in similar spaces. And their customers use that kind of equipment or software systems. So think about like in a medical device, in a medical practice space, they use what's called an electronic health record system, which is basically the equivalent of a CRM. And there's like 20 of these things out there, and they all have different bells and whistles on them and do different things, right? So you could sell you're the EHR person in Southeast Florida or Northeast Florida. Your job is both sales and service to those particular customers. Once they've gone through the acquisition, they go to the customer success team because it's primarily a software sale, but regular updates because you're co-located, just like you drop in and see somebody.
Okay. And so let's go with the pharma rep example. Like they'll walk the halls of medical buildings and go and drop in, and then what's the conversation? Do they have an appointment with the doctor, or are
Well,
they
it's a
just
great
talking to the
question. Like my dad was in the pharmaceutical sales business for 30 years, right? And he
uh-huh.
covered pretty much all of Western Canada, from Manitoba all the way to British Columbia, for different companies. But he knew the doctors in his territory and the pharmacists in his territory so well that he knew what day they saw people. So
Mhm.
he'd only go see this person on the day that he knew he saw people.
Okay.
That's it.
And the doctor makes a like an hour on Tuesdays that says, "I'll talk to anybody."
Exactly.
No.
Right. An hour or 2 hours on Tuesday or Wednesday or talk to anybody. Right.
Okay.
Exactly.
And then
My
they'll
dad was
cut.
famous for going fly fishing with people. That's what he used to do.
Okay. Nice. This is okay. And what I'm trying to understand is if you come in and you say, okay, I'm not gonna mess up this, you know, way of
What you're
doing
currently doing.
things,
Yeah.
but
Exactly.
I might be able to open up a channel of revenue for you that's lower margin, sorry, higher margin based on
Right.
the techniques of the other, sales techniques. So, and you're
Correct.
saying, how would you go about, augmenting this approach,
So
with,
we use an
yeah,
Yeah, so we use an account-based approach based on what we understand from the client's ideal client profile. It's not any different than anything else. We use an account-based approach. We identify the potential decision makers within there. We correlate that in relation to the existing customer base to make sure that we're not actually talking to any existing customers. And then from there, we go out and we have conversations with those people to see what makes sense and doesn't make sense. And in our markets, the phone is the most, and we're going to talk about this in just a few minutes, is the most effective channel because the majority of our clients are not sitting at a desk staring at a computer screen like you and I every day.
yeah.
They're
And
out
that's for
seeing
the
customers.
people on audio here on this. We it's audio and video, but people on audio, Blair's wearing a hat that says "Make the phone great again," which is so. I want to hear about that because what I'm trying to understand is with the doctor example, or the admin, whoever handles the doctor's schedule.
Right.
How would you be able to do that over the phone? Or
So,
replicating, taking them fly fishing, and really getting to
right.
know them. Yeah.
Right. So it's really simple. You say, when does the doctor see people outside of patients? And then they
Okay.
just tell you it's Tuesday at 10 o'clock, Tuesday from 10 till 12. We say, great. Can I grab 10 minutes with the doctor at 10:30 on Tuesday? And they put it in his calendar, and then you put it in your calendar, and you call the doctor, and you have a preliminary conversation with them, right?
Okay.
Very similar to what a proper sales development conversation looks like when you're actually speaking to somebody who's interested. And then if there's something that really is there, then basically you have a follow-up schedule for the doctor from not from 10:30 to 10:40, but 10:30 to 11, something like that, the following Tuesday, or a few
Got it.
weeks later,
Okay.
or something else.
And then, for example, you're selling a very specialized part for a assembly line, at a
Sure.
factory or something like that.
Right.
And in the old days, you would have walked in and talked to the, I don't know, shop
You
captain or whatever.
talk to the receptionist.
You
The
talk to
receptionist
somebody.
would right talk to the receptionist. The receptionist tell you that this is the right person,
Okay.
and you try to go out to the floor to talk to them, and they would pull you back in, right? Or
Yeah.
what they would do is they would say, okay, they would call them in, and then you would have a conversation about it. And then if there was something, you would have another conversation. You would scope out something or put some kind of specification together, and then start working on building a quote and building a system. But that's the days of when there wasn't what we call the buying committee anymore, right? Those are
Yeah.
the days when the plant manager could make a decision, $100,000 decision in 5 seconds.
Okay. And now there's, what is it, 7 to 8 people involved in everything,
It's a little bit smaller in our
Yeah.
markets, but
Okay.
it's not much smaller. Like it's more like you're dealing with the owner operator, or you're dealing with the person who has. So, for example, if you're like at a manufacturing plant or a refinery, the plant manager has the ultimate authority on making both executive and financial decisions, but he has to make sure that it fits within their financial parameters in order for them to move forward with something. Obviously, if the value is there, then they're going to make a positive decision. They might be required by headquarters to evaluate 3 other solutions, but that's okay because you're already the leading solution who brought attention to them to what's out there.
Got it. Okay. And so, looking at the tech industry and the way that the sales team is divided out to the SDRs, the AEs, and the customer success.
Yeah.
Does the SDR have a role in that process, like you were describing with the medical, the medical example?
100%. I mean, that's the point. The point is that what I call the modern sales motion does exist and is available in those places. We just have to be smarter about adopting to it. You can't use a spray and pray approach, which is what we've done over the last 12 years or so, right?
Okay.
Where we basically have called anybody on a list or sent a million emails to a million people a million times. That the motion we have to be smarter about it, about the way that we go about that outreach.
Got it. Okay. And so for that manufacturing example, there's the receptionist and then the shop captain and then the other two or three people that are involved, the owner. Where would the SDR, start to try to penetrate into that and get in the conversation just using the phone or
Right. So the first section is to understand who the people that are in the account. It's not any different than what we would normally do in a enterprise software solution, right? Okay, so we start making calls and having conversations with people to see if they're. The first question is, hey, we're looking for, we help with this. Are you the right person to talk to about this? And between 30 and 50% of the time, the person says no. And that's completely fine. And then we ask, well, who do you think is? And then they give us an indication as to who that could possibly be, or they say, I don't know. And that's fine. We just keep building on into the account. We found that, and this is the challenging thing in our space, everybody is an engineer.
Yeah.
And if you try to find the right engineer who has the problem that you're trying to solve, it takes probably 3 to 5 contacts within an account in order to get there.
Yeah. Okay. And so in that example, you find the shop captain, for example,
Right,
and
sure. Sure.
yeah, and then you would set up an appointment. Would it be a phone appointment with him
Yes.
or her, or is it that the person's going to come and visit? Yeah.
No, it would be a phone appointment.
Okay.
It would be a phone or a Zoom appointment. Hey, you'd be surprised how many of these people have a computer. They just aren't there all the time, but they'll do a Zoom call, no problem, or they'll do a video conference call. Back in the day, I used to do GoToMeeting, and we used to use a whole bunch of other tools like that, right?
Okay.
I remember there was one we had called SlideShare. It was a screen sharing program. I'm not sure if you remember that.
Totally. Yeah.
It was a clear
Join
slide. It's called
me.
clear slide. Join.me. Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
I was thinking about that the other day.
Oh,
They had a big advantage, back, this is like 10 years ago.
right.
Join
You would
me
just talk
kind
to
of, yeah. Yeah.
talk to them on the phone. You say, hey, just log into your computer, go to join.me, hit this code, and away we go.
Yeah, it was great. It was
Yeah.
they blew it. Whoever I don't know what happened to Join Me, but they were doing Zoom. So what you're saying is, nine times out of 10, the people are out on the floor, doing their job in the industrial plant, but they do go back to the office and do Zoom calls.
For sure. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes. 100%.
Yeah,
And they do have meetings.
yeah.
They do have meetings, right? And so, but sometimes the meetings are on the shop floor or in the field, and sometimes they're in the office.
And you better be ready for that call because they're probably not going to give you much time. They just want to know what do you want and how can you help me?
Right.
Is
Exactly.
that sort of yeah.
And you know what? That's not any different than a traditional SDR motion either, by the way. Try and call VPs of sales, right?
Yeah.
VPs of sales, shockingly, have the least amount of patience of anybody in.
They're the worst. I mean, no offense to anybody listening, but they're the worst to call. And this is a classic thing, but they get off hanging up on you and being really mean,
Right.
and then they go back to their team and say, "Hey, how come you didn't make any cold calls today?" That's classic.
But I remember once making a call to one of those guys, and he was in a team meeting. I called his mobile phone. He says, I'm sitting here with my entire team. What do you got? I said, really? Your entire team? I was like, Fantastic. Then I better knock this one out of the park, shouldn't I? Then everybody roared laughter. And so
Oh my God. That's like trial by fire right there. So you got to be on it. So okay. This is really interesting. So these companies, these industrial companies, because I'm in such a Silicon Valley bubble here that
yeah,
99% of the people that I talk to are selling software. And it's a
right.
very, it's a saturated market. They've got their own issues of, that they're trying to solve. And I hardly ever talk to anybody who's out of this, this,
Well,
and
look.
yeah,
So our clients have software, right? They do
sure.
use software. So, for
Everybody's a
example, like
software. Yeah.
a predictive analytics company that focuses on measuring what uptime and downtime is within a manufacturing plant, but only works with process manufacturing and not discrete manufacturing, is a specific type of software. But
Yeah.
it's a very narrow field. And that's the other thing, is that not everybody is a good fit for our client services,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. What would be
Um,
a good fit? So they come to you and they go, Blair, we need to grow this and we need higher margin. Like what do you got? Like who would be the ideal customer
well,
for you?
I mean, so first of all, as with typical outbound sales development, if the ACV does not exceed $30,000 or the LTV does not exceed $100,000, it's probably not a good fit, because the cost of acquisition is somewhere close to $20,000 in
Hmm.
most cases. When you add all the costs in, it's somewhere in that neighborhood, right?
Okay.
So,
Gotcha.
so
Okay.
it's important to understand that. Like, we're not we're selling the software system, but for these clients to spend $30,000 on a system is nothing, right?
Yeah.
They spend hundreds of thousands of dollars a month on electricity,
Right.
right?
Okay.
So if you have a way, for example, of manufacturing or measuring their smart meter or optimizing their smart meter that saves them $10,000 to $15,000 a month, and it only costs them $5,000 a month, they're interested.
Sure. And generally do they have sort of a sales leader or a marketing leader who quote unquote should be doing what you're suggesting, but they just don't have the expertise?
Well, usually, yeah, yes, and no. Yes, they usually have a sales leader, or they have a marketing leader who knows something, or they have the owner operator who, the founder, whatever you want to call it, who wants to build this motion out, doesn't know where to go, doesn't know where to start. What I find happens generally on the technology with the technology companies. So let's take construction technology companies, for example. Okay, so these are companies that are building out software systems with sensors, usually, to measure what's going on a construction site. All right, so for safety purposes and for compliance purposes and for economic purposes, because if you can spend 10% less money on drywall because you measured it properly the first time from the plans, then that's 10% that the general contractor gets to put in his pocket.
Mm.
So why wouldn't he spend $1,000 a month on a piece of software that helps him understand that, right? um, so so it's a whole different group of people, and a lot of them, they're still doing this, as I said, sales 1.0, right? Like driving
Yeah.
around in trucks, talking to people, or they do what I call having the how shall I call this? The sponsor, right? They have someone who's been in the industry, or the influencer, someone who's been in the industry for a long time and knows a lot of people and talks like he knows a lot of people and has worked at a bunch of different companies. But really, this person has the same 50 relationships that they've taken from company to company to company,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
And you're hoping that that person is going to generate the traction that you're hoping to get. But sometimes what happens is that that person, after they've exhausted their natural market, they don't have any of the tools or skills to go out and go find new clients. Then they wind up moving on about a year and a half to 2 years later.
Oh, you see that a lot. And in your system that you set up, is it a territory based system, or do you just completely, go
No,
digital? It's a digital world.
it's all digital. It's all digital.
Okay.
So teams call into different. We focus on personas and accounts, right? And we're testing to see whether personas make sense. So, for example, we had one German client that wanted to bring their system into the United States. They told us that the VP of engineering at every plant was the right person to speak to. We're like, okay. So the first 6 weeks we spent banging our head against the wall, not speaking to any VPs of engineering
Sure.
because every VP of engineering was too busy doing other things or wasn't interested in what we were selling. What we found out after about 12 weeks is that there's this function called the reliability engineer. We said, okay, we just want to test this persona for 3 weeks. All of a sudden, we started having more conversations. People were more engaged and more interested, and we had more sales meetings. We had more traction with that one persona that wasn't the VP of engineering, who, by the way, was responsible for the proactivity and the health maintenance of the plant, who reported to the plant manager and not the VP of engineering.
Yeah.
And the only way you know is by having conversations with people. And this gets back to the concept of things that are working in sales development today and things that aren't working in sales development today. I'm sure you've
Hmm.
had millions of conversations about this right now.
Oh my gosh. Well, yeah, I mean, it's just really quickly on that example that you gave. Um, the client comes to you with a hypothesis of basically who they
Yes,
think would be the buyer, and
yes,
and
100%.
and then you need 3 to 6 months. I mean, I don't know how long it takes, but you have to either prove or disprove the hypothesis, and then they might come to you and say, hey, we've been paying you guys for 6 months and we haven't had one meeting. Then they pull the
Right.
plug on the deal. So it puts you in a tough position because you've got to like go along with what they think that should be the right person, but then also
Right.
A/B testing all these other people so that you can actually find somebody who wants to talk.
But in the traditional sales model, you don't get a chance to do any of that testing, right?
Yeah, because
Because
they
because
find a groove and stay in there and yeah,
or you can't talk to 100 VPs of engineering in 3 months,
sure.
right? Because they're in like a bunch of different places all over the country,
Yeah.
right?
Interesting. Okay, and you were saying, even in tech or in other industries, sales development. And
Mhm.
you're right. I do talk to people every day. Everyone's just completely confused and overwhelmed right now to try to figure out what works. There's no, silver bullet like process that it works right now. It's a series of testing, as you mentioned. But what do you think?
So I think we have to go back to first principles, right? I think
Yeah,
that's what we really need to do. We really need to ask ourselves, what is it that we're actually trying to accomplish here, right? And that's
yeah,
to understand the problems of our prospects they have on a daily basis by asking them, right? By
uh,
having a mindset that's like, okay, I don't know if I can help you, but hey, listen, if I can, let's have a longer conversation about this,
yeah,
right? Um, and then crafting messaging that resonates with those problems. And what's the quickest way to understand that is to talk to people or talk to your existing customers who have some of those problems,
yeah,
right? If you're lucky enough to have 100 customers, look at what some commonalities are between them, and then send some people out to go have those conversations. And the reason why we have a problem with that is because, frankly, we're living on we're living on rocket fuel, and we don't have the time to spend 2 months or 6 weeks talking to existing customers about what their pain and problems are because we need to start getting deals in the pipeline now.
yeah. How do you balance that? I mean, first thing is, how do you go out and talk to people about their problems? Because it seems like nobody would really want to talk. They want to kind of sweep their problems under the rug, and they're
Yeah,
shy about
sure.
talking that, hey, or being vulnerable. To like,
Right.
I'm really struggling.
Right. So I feel that the way that you do that is saying, hey, listen, so for example, if you were one of my company's clients, right? I would say, hey, David, I know you've been a customer of ours for a very long time. I'm wondering if I could just grab 15 minutes to pick your brain about a couple things that we see going on in the market and understand a little bit more about how it impacts to you and why what we're doing is helping you. Is that okay?
Yeah.
And that's it. And then you have to have a structured conversation. I want to talk about these three things. I only want to talk about three things. I don't want to talk about 50 things, right?
Yeah.
And then the last question you leave is there anything else?
Mhm.
And that's when the floodgates open and they can tell you whatever they want to tell you.
Okay. And how long should these calls be scheduled for? Like 15 minutes or 30 minutes?
15 to 20. Look, I think 30 minutes is the longest you want to have them open for because you want to be conscious of their time. If they're really a customer that has a problem that you're solving, that likes what you do, there's no reason why they wouldn't want to have a conversation with you so you understand it a little bit better. And if you're a sales leader, you should record those conversations, right?
Yeah.
And you should play them on a loop as part of the onboarding.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah, because you're finding out what these people are dealing with, the problems that they have, and how you could potentially help
Right.
to solve them.
And if
What do you do with that
and
information? Once you get that, what do you do with it?
that's the information that you should use to build your ideal client profiles, right? Like
Yeah,
this type of person has this kind of problem. This type of person has this kind of problem. This is what their daily life looks like. These are the types of tasks that they do. This is that jobs to be done framework that really we're trying to build and understand, right? If you're
yeah,
fortunate enough to have enough customers to be able to do this, you should definitely be doing this. This should be a part of your customer success motion,
yeah.
right? It should
This is
be without a
that's
doubt,
critical. Yeah, this is
right?
so. I mean, we could do a whole show about this, because I think that there's still that mindset that like, hey, I sell, the replacement part for the conveyor belt,
Right,
and here's all the
right,
features and here's the functionality and here's everything that it does. Don't you want to
right,
buy some? And it's
right.
like you're,
Yeah,
yeah,
that's the old that's the look, I was trained on feature function benefit. I was trained on that, right?
yeah,
But that's not how people think about this stuff right now. It's like you know, people don't buy drills for having drills unless you like tools, right? People buy drills to have holes, right?
right.
So
That's
that's what they
classic.
buy for, right?
Yeah, and
So,
and
and a lot of time, what we
yeah,
find in these companies today is they've misaligned their total addressable market. They don't know who their total addressable market is. They're making a guess, but they're not educated enough in themselves or enlightened enough themselves to say, we understand we're just making a guess, right? Our
yeah.
TAM could be something completely different, right?
Okay. Yeah, and they're running out of time, and I think it's probably there's a little bit of inertia in that if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So
Right.
why do we have to do all this fancy inside sales stuff if everything's okay? And then it's also like it's scary to make a change. So
For
they might
sure.
come to you and how long do they give you generally to show some kind of result?
So we can show results in a matter of weeks. We can show whether or not our method can fit in a matter of weeks.
Okay.
So it's not like it has to be a 12-month engagement, right?
Yeah.
Or an 18-month engagement. It can be, but in a matter of weeks, we can help them. There was one company that we worked with that had a very unique nanotechnology sensor for dairies, right? We literally scheduled them 120 meetings in 4 months. They were inundated with the
Wow.
number of introductory meetings that they had. We knew that this was going to be that case within the first 2 weeks, simply because the technology was so innovative and so interesting and fixing such a big problem in that particular industry, right? But they realized that their product was broken and was not ready for market after 4 months.
Oh boy. Okay. So the technology was awesome. You found the right people. They wanted to talk to you. You went out, but then they came back and said, "Hey, this isn't ready for prime time." And
Exactly.
what happened? Then that's the end of the engagement for you?
That's the end. That's the end of the engagement. And then,
Okay.
we checked in a year later or so, and they're still trying to figure it out.
Yeah, when you're ready, let's do it. And then on the flip side, do you ever go back and say, "Hey, look, we've experimented, we've done all these things, we're just not getting anywhere. Let's shake hands and part ways,"
Absolutely,
or
100%,
okay.
100%. So,
Yeah.
so I have a view: solve the problem or go away. Right?
Yeah.
So either we're solving a problem, or we're going to go away. And I've always said to all of our clients, if we're not adding value, then we're going to go away. We're going to make recommendations as to what some others should do. So, for example, I remember speaking to a prospect a long time ago who was doing work in the inventory management system in the retail sector for small retailers. Right? A big problem that they have is that they get, imagine a small grocer, right? They get a box of a bunch of stuff with a bill of lading in there, and they have to check to make sure that everything that's on the bill of lading is exactly what was delivered every day. Because if it's not exactly right, they get charged over or under based on what the bill of lading is. Because by taking it into their shop, they've accepted it.
Sure.
So they were automating the technology, but their price point was so low that there's no way that we could help them. And there was literally hundreds of thousands of these retailers in the US. So how are you going to reach these people? Right? So we suggested a couple of different other methods.
Got it. Okay. Oh man. Okay. There's a lot to dig in on. So we're Blair. If someone is out there, they're listening to this and they're just like, okay, I want to try this. How do they get in touch with you?
So the best way is to just reach out to me on LinkedIn.
Okay.
Despite the fact that LinkedIn has become a cesspool of messaging,
Jeez. Wow. That's
um,
nasty.
I will respond to messages that way.
Yeah.
Or they can just go to our website, insidecro.com. You can click book a meeting. You can book a meeting, and we can grab 15 minutes. That's the easiest way to figure it out.
Okay. Yeah, this is really, really interesting. I got a bunch of more questions for you, but we'll
All right.
split it out into two podcasts.
Okay.
But Blair, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your wisdom with the listeners.
All right. I'm happy to do that. And I love the work you guys are doing over there. I've been a follower for quite a while, David, once you started.
Well, I want to work with you because we need to, expand out of the tech industry. The tech industry sucks right now. So, we need to be available for a wider, there's a whole world out there,
Absolutely.
that's like, needs help in this area. So, we'll be in touch.
Okay, man. Have a great day.